Hello everyone and welcome to Marie's Scrappy Creations, where we sew the scraps of your life into beautiful creations. Now this week I wanted to make something that was autumn themed for our homes using something we had. Now we all have scraps, but I have these scraps of leftovers, let's call them leftovers, from a charm pack and a jelly roll that Kimberly from My Fabric Addiction 1, her link is below, she sent me these last year, and I have these left over, and I wanted to make something because I bet any of you who use pre-cuts have things left over, right? I mean, you've got a piece here, a piece there, and all you need to make these adorable pot holders are 2 of the 5-inch squares and 2 jelly roll strips. Other than your backing and your batting, but you know, for the front. Now, you don't have to have the pre-cuts. You can definitely use your scraps, use your yardage, whatever you have on hand, and make it your own. You can make these as scrappy as you want or as matchy-matchy as you want. And of course, they don't have to be autumn. They can be any theme or anything that you want, but I think these are great. So the links will be below. All the supplies you need will be listed in the description box as well as the pinned comment. And I don't like to say it very often, but if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, you should think about subscribing, and that way you get a notification when I put up a new tutorial. Okay, let's get going. All right, let's take a look at what we're going to need. Now, the first thing I want to say is if you don't have pre-cuts, just cut your own, really. We're going to use what we have on hand. This is left from last year, so it is a partial jelly roll. And all you need, if you're using jelly rolls, all you need is 2 pieces. And these are 2.5 inches wide. All the measurements will be listed below in the description box as well as in the pinned comment so that you can find it easily. So you're going to choose 2 of those. Then you're going to choose 2 pieces from a charm pack. If you have it left over, if you don't, you're going to cut 2 5-inch squares. Those can be different or they can be the same. The choice is yours. And that's the same thing with this. You can choose to make it as scrappy as you'd like. Okay, so there's that. The other fabric requirements would be you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are at least 9 inches square for your backing. If you're going to add a tab, you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are about 1 3/4 by, I don't know, probably 5.5 or 6 inches. You're going to need the usual suspects: your cutting mat, your acrylic ruler, your scissors and rotary cutter, a point turner, pins, whoops, flying thread. Let's see. All right, I have 2 threads because I just wanted to quickly say I'm using polyester thread. You may choose to use cotton. I won't get into everything about the reasoning except for cotton is used so that it won't melt. I have never personally had any issues with pot holders using polyester thread, and I use it for its strength. You use whatever you are comfortable with. We're going to need a 1/4 inch foot, a universal or all-purpose foot, and you probably are going to need a walking foot. And you know me, I'm going to use an iron. All right. The only thing else that you'll need is your batting for the center. I'm going to use 3 layers of 100% cotton batting. You may also use insulbrite if that's something that you like to use. As far as how many layers you'll need, some people use 1 cotton batting and 1 layer of insulbrite. I've done that. I didn't feel it was enough. I could feel the heat. I didn't burn myself, but I could definitely feel the heat. I used 3 layers. All right, let's get busy on this. It's such a fun pot holder to make, and it's so easy. And we're using leftovers. You can't get better than that. Scrappy leftovers. All right, here we go. I am prepared. I have my 2 backing pieces that are 9 inches square. I have my 2 center pieces, which are 5 inches. My 2 pieces from a jelly roll that are width of fabric by 2.5 inches. And I have 6 pieces of my cotton batting. So the first thing we're going to do is take one of our strips here, and I'm going to go past this. I'm not cutting it off at the moment, but as you see, there's a factory edge there. You want to be mindful of that. They're a little thick right there. If you have a directional fabric, you want to make sure you have it where you want it. You're going to place them right sides together, lining up the edge, and hold them with a clip or a pin, whichever you prefer to use. And mine's basically a non-directional on this, but I feel like the jelly roll does have a bit of a direction to it. Okay, so I'll show you this close up here in just a second, but I just left a little bit of space right here between them. Okay, so then I'm going to trim that off, leaving a little bit of space. You don't need a whole lot, but you want some. We're going to take this over to the machine. Here we are at the sewing machine. I'm going to use a 2.5 millimeter stitch length. You could use a 2, whatever you want. My needle is a size 12 and I'm using my 1/4 inch foot. I also have a scrap piece of fabric called a leader or a starter. It just helps keep everything going how it should. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and ending of each piece. Step my little leader off there, put it back over at the sewing machine when I go. I'm going to cut right in the middle between those two. I'm going to go to the ironing board and I'm going to press these. I like to press my seams open on these smaller projects. I'll do that and then show you what it looks like. Okay, here I am. I'm not going, these are all pressed. I'm not going to trim these off right now. I'm just going to lay this piece out. Again, the strip. Lay my pieces right sides facing, and again, leaving just a little bit of space on the edge. Like this. I'm going to pin them again. I won't take you to the sewing machine this time. I don't want to bore you, but I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back tack at the beginning and the ending of each square. I'm going to press them, and I will be right back, and you'll see what we do next. All right, I am done with pressing my seams open. Now we're going to do our first trim. You're going to line one of the lines on your ruler against this line or this line, and you're going to straighten all 4 edges. All right, and next we're going to take our second piece of jelly roll or scrap of 2.5 inch fabric. We're going to do the exact same thing. Oh, goodness. I've got a thread that wanted to stay stuck. You're going to lay them front sides together, or right sides together. And again, being mindful that you've got a factory edge there. I'm going to pin or clip. Just like this, and we're going to go to the sewing machine. Same thing as last time. Whoops, I didn't leave enough space there. I didn't have a pin in my mouth. You didn't see that. I didn't even show it. How did you know? Okay, I'll sew that and be right back. Forgot to turn my air conditioner off. You guys probably heard it roaring. I'll press that. Actually, I won't press that. I've got to sew the other side first. Okay, just open it up. Lay your piece out again. Well, maybe I'll iron that little crease though. And you know, these could be any season or just scrappy pieces, whatever you have left over. Because jelly rolls, charm packs, pre-cuts of any kind aren't cheap. So you definitely want to use them up. And you can mix and match these as much as you want. Each side or edge could be a different fabric if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. They're your potholders. Or maybe they're for your daughter. Your daughter-in-law, your aunt, your uncle, your neighbor, or for whoever you want them to be for. I didn't poke myself. Trim off our edges. I'll press it. And then we're going to start putting them together as soon as we trim. Okay, everything is ironed. Going to trim these off just as I did the last ones. And then we'll even them up, making sure everything... I always go along this line here as I do this one, just to make sure that everything is as it should be. Potholders are very forgiving. You don't have to be really picky. I apologize. I keep moving. I have a tripod in front of me, so it's kind of funny to move around. You have to sew with a post or cut with a post in between your hands or arms. And I was just thinking I could have done this differently with a dark center and the lighter fabrics to the outside, and it would have been just as nice. But you know, I really like these. And as I said, they're a great way to use up your little pieces or your pieces of pre-cuts that you have left over, because you don't want to waste those. Oops. Don't want to cut wrong either. And in the middle between that, I realized I cut these at 9 1/4. I don't know how I did that, but I guess it's not a big deal. I can trim off the excess. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Okay, we have 2 of these. So let's grab our batting, whatever you're going to use. Mine is always cut a little bit bigger. Okay, lay that down like that. Then you're going to take a piece of your backing and you're going to place it right sides together, except for, let me say, yeah, I got to trim that down. I'll be right back. All right, as I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself, I have 3 layers of cotton batting, and again, you might be using insulbrite or something like that. You do whatever you want to do. And you're going to put right sides together, and that's, other than sewing around, that's the end of it, unless you're going to be using a hanging loop, which I am not, but I'm going to show you what I did in case you want to make one. This measures about 5 3/4. I cut it at 1 3/4 inches wide, and again, all measurements will be below. I folded it in half and pressed it. Then I opened it up and pressed both edges to that center, folded it in half and pressed it. And of course, you're going to have to stitch that, okay? So we're going to pretend that's stitched, all right? So if you're going to use it, now is the time that you would pin it wherever you want it. And when I use these, I always make sure that I go past the edge here. So, you know, you would find your center and place that. But again, that's not something I'm doing this time. So right sides together, you're going to pin or clip in place. I always start with all 4 corners. And this is some thick batting. I think this is that Warm and Natural. Either way, it's very thick. Okay, and then I'm going to mark my opening, because you have to have a part that you don't sew so that you can get it turned right side out. Oh, the head just fell off that pin. Goodness, having a hard time finding a pin here. I'm going to move that over. Right, so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And then when I go to the sewing machine, I'm going to show you, because I'm going to use my all-purpose foot. But because if you left just 1/4 inch, it would be difficult to sew that opening. Okay, so I'm going to pin the other one up, and then I'll meet you over at my sewing machine. All right, now I am showing you this close up for a reason. I have my universal or all-purpose foot on my machine, and I would like to have 3/8 or a little bit wider seam allowance. So the 3/8 on your ruler, oops, that's a little bit too close. Let me see if I can zoom that out a little. All right, so right here we've got these marks. That's the 1/4 inch. Okay, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and see this line right, well, anyway, there's a line right here. So that's the 3/8 line, and that would be your 1/2 inch. So I'm going to put this edge against the edge of my presser foot, and then I'm going to see where my needle falls. Okay, it's going to fall somewhere around here, but I can move my needle position over to the left. If you can't do that, then you can make a line on your potholders, but let me show you how I do this. I put it in a place so that I can see where the 3/8 mark is. And I realize that you can't see down through here. But what I do then, put my needle back where it should be, is I move my needle position over. Now for me, that is 2.3 when it falls at 3/8. Your machine may vary. I just wanted to throw that in there in case you weren't used to moving your needle position or wondered why you might do that. Okay? All right, so we're going to get sewing. Okay. I might have left a little bit bigger of an opening than I needed right there. I'm going to back that off. And if you've been with me a while, you know that on a lot of projects, I like to pull up the bottom thread so that it doesn't tangle in any way. And I just held on to my top thread and did one stitch forward. Tuck those in behind. I'm using a 2.5 millimeter stitch length, and I'm going to stop just about the same length, so about 3/8 of an inch before the ending. I'm going to go 2 stitches forward and 2 stitches back as I start. And on we go. Okay, we're sewn. Let's take our pins off, out. I guess I was thinking of clips. They would be off by now. All right. First things first, we're going to clip our corners close, but just be careful not to cut into your sewing line. All right, so all 4 corners, clip them nicely. Clip it good. But if you do happen to cut into your sewing line, just take it right back over to the sewing machine and you can fix it. So let's do all 4 corners before going on to the next part. All right, so now we need to trim this part. I'm going to use the rotary cutter for that. You can use scissors if you want, and I'm going to leave about 1/8 of an inch all the way around, except for where our opening is. You don't want to trim very close to there, so I'll show you what to do when we get there on the first one. And this is just reducing the bulk so that when you turn it right side out, you don't have a great big lumpy bump right there along your edge. All right, so taking your scissors, this is the edge where the opening is. Right before the opening, just clip down a little bit. So that's what it should look like, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'll be right back. All right, this is where you need a point turner, purple thing, crochet hook, something. You just don't want to poke your corners out. So going right in between the 2 right side facing fabrics, you're going to flip these right side out. And I usually push my thumb to the corner, and then on this side, I put my finger right there and then poke it out. You get a pretty good corner just from that. We'll get to the point turner in just a moment. We're going to leave it like that. It never fails. Every time I film, there's four-wheelers out there. I could be here all day long and they wouldn't go past the place. Okay, so you're just carefully pushing your edges outward, okay? So you just give them a little poke like that. We're going to take these over to the iron. You're going to have to use some steam with your iron or some water. It works best that way to get everything where it should be, because you want everything flat. So you're going to press it from this side and from this side. And what we're going to do is tuck this in, okay, like that. We're going to press that well. We're going to pin that where that opening was. Just want to make sure that everything is even first. Okay, so I'm going to go press that. I've shown you guys this quite a few times, so I don't think I need to take you to the iron, but just press from both sides. And if this isn't flat, just kind of roll it between your fingers like this, working your way around, making sure if you have a corner that's not quite where it should be, just put your point turner in there and just carefully poke at it. See? But they'll work their way out as the pot holders are being used. Okay, I'll be right back. I've pressed my seams, my pot holders, so that they're flat. Now I'm going to put some pins. And I always mark where they start and stop. I don't know why I do that, but where the openings start and stop, I always like to know as I'm sewing along. So just making sure. Now I did press these, like I pressed with the iron here and again on the other side. But just even those edges up so that they meet and clip or pin in place. And before I go to the sewing machine with you, I'm going to put my walking foot on. I normally don't, but I think that especially if you're a beginner, it's probably the best way to go. So I figured I would show you how to do this with it on your machine. They're a very handy thing to have. Very handy. We're going to move our needle over because remember we had it over to 3/8 of an inch, but we definitely need to move it out of there before we top stitch. Because what we're going to do is we're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch away from this edge, okay? Just so that we know we have that closed. The other option that you have on this is to hand stitch that with a ladder stitch, blind stitch, and then you can just do the rest. I have another thing to show you here, but you could close that by hand, but I'm going to do it by machine. I'm going to take you with me. Now I did the same thing after I put my walking foot on. I did the same thing with the edge, and I just made sure that it was inside the 1/4 inch so that it was closer to that 1/8 inch mark. It isn't quite up to it because it would be very hard to keep this walking foot on there, I think, anyway. All right, so I have a black thread in my top, and I have orange for my bobbin thread, and I'm going to take that off. I'm going to set my stitch length to 3. I hope I have the right walking foot on here. I have 2 or 3. One of them doesn't go to this machine, and you'd think I'd mark it, but I never remember which is which. All right, I'm going to go forward a couple and back a couple, or back a couple and forward. I'm going to stitch close to that edge, closer than I am on my other edges. Okay, now that we've gone around the edge, I want to do a line of stitching along the inside. Now you could go right between the two and stitch in the ditch. You can stitch just to the inside or the outside and the inside. You can do it however you want. I am not great at stitching in the ditch. I should try it here. Just to try to follow the line. Okay, I'm going to give it a try just because you guys want me to. First off, I'm going to put my needle back to center, and as you can see, I put my regular foot back on. Boy, I'm bound and determined to hit that tripod, aren't I? Right, I'm going to stitch around here. I'll speed it up for you, but I'll just let you stay with me anyway for the company. You guys will keep me company, right? Okay, look at that. I didn't do too badly. All right, I need to trim off my threads. Find them here on the back side. So that's what our autumn pot holders look like. And of course you could make them with any scraps. It really doesn't matter. And you know, you could use them one layer. You could put kind of two together with one layer of batting and make kind of a short table runner. There's so many different things that you could do with this. But either way around it, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today and making these cute little autumn pot holders. I hope you give them a try or a version of them. You know you have those scraps everywhere, right? So thank you so much. And remember, be kind out there. The world needs more of that. I'll see you next time right here at Marie's Scrappy Creations. Bye-bye.